EMP Series Revolution, Episode 13. Captain Crawford stepped out onto the platform, the blown-out window and wall from yesterday's explosion behind him. He addressed the crowd gathered there for the press conference that he himself had called. "Citizens, I am here before you today to make a public plea. Many of you know Carl Fairley and the people who follow him. Many of you sympathize with him and the fight that he is leading. Many of you have aided and supported his efforts, which I am certain you thought were just. His recent attack on this town is a desperate act of a desperate man. He knows he has entered into a fight for which he is outgunned and outmatched. He has entered into a fight that he knows he cannot win. In his desperation, he has attacked this town, I'm quite certain, in the hopes of killing members of my command. However, he has succeeded only in killing 2 innocent citizens and wounding several others. One innocent victim was a young mother and wife. I can no longer play this game of cat and mouse. I can no longer pull any punches in bringing this terrorist to justice. My plea is this: evaluate your action, or lack of actions in many cases. I know that many of you have turned a blind eye to the activities of Mr. Fairley and his terrorist cells. Some of you have even given him aid and support. I plead with all of you to stop helping these men destroy our community." Then he paused as he slowly scanned the crowd, making eye contact with as many people as he could. "I am certain that at least one person here today has knowledge of where these men are holed up and what their next moves might be. Please turn them in to us so that we can help stop this senseless killing of innocent people. There will be no reprisals from my command for those who have aided them in the past. Come forward now, and any part you may have had will be overlooked." Again, he paused to scan the crowd. "If you do not come forward and are discovered later to be in collusion with these men, I promise you I will bring the full weight of the law down upon you. Come forward now before it's too late. Come forward before it is one of your family or loved ones who gets killed or hurt by this madman. If you fear reprisal or repercussions from Mr. Fairley and his group for coming forward, then you can do so anonymously in a note or letter to myself or any of my men. Please help keep this community safe. Thank you all for coming." With that, Captain Crawford turned and walked off the platform and back toward his office. The crowd murmured and talked amongst themselves. The mood and tone was contentious. Some believed in what Crawford and his men were doing there. Others believed that Carl was innocent of what he was being accused of, and that his cause was just. Arguments ensued. A fight broke out. Lieutenant Oliver Sanders watched these events unfold. He looked over to watch Crawford as he walked away across the street to his office. He made some notes in a pad he carried with him. He turned and walked away toward the Jeep that was waiting for him. He drove up to the site where the trestle was blown out and sat looking out over the precipice and the river below. He sat there quietly. As he sat there quietly, he heard a twig snap behind him. He spun around and leapt up to his feet. There, stepping out of the shadows, were two men armed with rifles. He reached for his sidearm, but was restrained before he could unholster it. Greg, wearing a mask, reached down and removed the .45 caliber handgun from Saunders' side and tossed it in the dirt several feet away. He and the other man, also masked, held Saunders in restraint. Carl Fairley then stepped forward out of the shadows. He walked up to Saunders and stood before him. He looked at Greg and nodded. Greg and his partner released their grip on Lieutenant Saunders. Carl looked him directly in the eye. Lieutenant Oliver Saunders, graduate of West Point, class of 2018. Undergrad at Columbia Law. Fourth in your class. Wife Cindy, parents Tom and Elizabeth. No children. He continued to stare into Saunders' eyes. Saunders responded, Constable, how do you know all that? How could you have gotten my personnel file? Carl laughed. Getting your file was easy. Let me share something I know about you that nobody else knows. Several months ago, a man initially approached you. He had been watching and evaluating you for quite some time by then. He saw the conflict between you and your commanding officer, Major Stillman. What he actually believed he saw was the conflict between honor and deceit, between good and evil. He went on to thoroughly and completely investigate and vet you, a painstaking process that took months to complete. After he was convinced that you were an honorable, morally grounded individual and that you were loyal to your country and to your oath of service, he then, and only then, enlisted you into his cause, our cause. Carl let his words hang there for a moment, allowing Saunders time to absorb them. Now, Lieutenant, here's the thing. This friend of mine, he's dead. The recruitment process that he had mastered over the years only works because of the complete secrecy on his end. Secret even to me. So as a result of that, I am not 100% sure that you are even the man he recruited. He could not and did not reveal that information to me. Then he paced back and forth for a minute and stopped to look again at Saunders. But you see, Lieutenant, I've been around this particular block a few times myself, and I'm good at absorbing details and signals and noticing little things that people say and don't say. So I'm like 97% sure that you are the man my friend recruited. Now, I can't tell you his name, and it wouldn't matter anyway because I know he didn't give you his real name. But if you are this recruit, then that means that you had certain knowledge of corruption in Major Stillman's command. He paused again to study his reaction to what he was saying. Any of this ringing a bell, Lieutenant? Before Saunders could answer, Carl continued. So let's say I'm right, and again, I'm pretty sure I am. Let's say you are this mystery recruit of my friends. What do you suppose the odds are that Stillman was replaced with another pawn in some larger player's game? Enter Captain Crawford. How long a period between Stillman's death and Crawford's insertion into command here? Like, are we talking weeks? Days? Hours? Did Crawford change anything in the way things were being done when he came on board? Or did he just continue with business as usual? Think about all this carefully, Lieutenant. What do you think the chances are that someone upstairs from Stillman was pulling the strings of this puppet show? Could Crawford be another insert by this puppet master to move a corrupt agenda forward? Tell me what you're thinking right now, Lieutenant. Saunders paused for a moment and answered Carl. There is no evidence, one way or the other, Constable. There's nothing to prove or disprove anything you're telling me. Carl responded. Fair enough, Lieutenant. But if you are the man I think you are, then how do you explain me knowing all this? You see, my late friend, he and I worked together for years. Sometimes all that we had that we could trust and rely on was our instincts. I trusted his completely. And his instincts were to trust some new young recruit. And that is good enough for me. Good enough for me, actually, to risk my life on. And I think that you are that new young recruit. So you think about how I knew all this and what that means in the big picture type scenario. You see, Lieutenant, you have no risk in trusting me. But I have great risk in trusting you. That's how sure I am of who you are. Who my late friend was. When you sort all this out, ask yourself one question. Do you think that I killed that innocent young woman yesterday on the platform? Do you think, based on how we have been bringing this fight forward, that any of us would kill innocent citizens? You see, Lieutenant, if something fits so far out of place, there's always a reason why. Lieutenant, figure that out, and you've figured everything out. We will talk again soon, Lieutenant. Then Carl turned to walk away, with Greg and his partner still standing beside Lieutenant Saunders. He turned back one more time and said, Just think about it, Lieutenant. I know you're an intelligent man. With that, he disappeared into the shadows. Greg walked over to Saunders' sidearm, laying in the dirt, picked it up, and released the mag clip, and it slid out into his hand. He tossed it off into the woods and pulled the slide back, ejecting the round that sat in the chamber. He tossed the gun off in the other direction. Then he and his partner followed Carl into the shadows.
Whisper in the sound of silence.